Trump tried to treat Canada like a vassal state. He thought he could demand obedience. Carney didn't scream back. He didn't get angry. He simply opened a door to Europe and walked through it. And now the Pentagon is scrambling. Washington is in shock. And you need to understand why this isn't just a diplomatic spat. This is a divorce. In the next 40 minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly what just happened, why the U.S. military is suddenly blind in the North, and why Mark Carney's quiet signature might be the loudest noise made on the global stage in a decade. So what just happened? To understand today's shock, you have to look at what happened 3 days ago. Reports out of Washington confirmed that the Trump White House issued an ultimatum to Ottawa. The demand was simple and frankly insulting. Trump wanted full operational control over Canada's new Arctic deep-water port project. He framed it as continental security. Chaw said the U.S. Navy needed unrestricted access to Canadian sovereign waters to protect against Russia and China. Basically, he told Canada, you can't protect your own house, so we're taking the keys. In the past, a Canadian Prime Minister might have tried to negotiate. They might have offered a compromise. They might have stalled. Mark Carney didn't do any of that. Instead of replying to the White House, Carney's plane touched down in Germany. This morning, at a joint press conference with European leaders, Canada announced it is officially joining the European Sky Shield Initiative. And this is the kicker. Canada signed a massive exclusive procurement deal for German and French submarines to patrol the Arctic, not American submarines, European ones. The technology does not rely on the Pentagon's grid. The command structure does not route through Washington. Carney looked at the cameras and said, Canada's sovereignty is not for rent. He bypassed the U.S. military, industrial complex entirely. He cut the United States out of the defense of the North American Arctic. Think about the magnitude of that. The United States considers the Arctic its backyard. Trump considers Canada a resource colony. And suddenly, the nice neighbor just invited the Europeans to set up shop on the roof. The Pentagon wasn't told until the ink was dry. The State Department found out when the press release went live. This is a massive humiliation for Donald Trump. He thought he was squeezing a weaker partner. Instead, he pushed that partner into the arms of a rival power bloc. Let's look at the receipts because you need to see the concrete proof that this isn't just talk. This is money, steel, and code moving away from the United States. First, look at the submarine deal. For years, the U.S. has been pressuring Canada to buy American nuclear subs. It's a way to lock Canada into U.S. technology. If you buy the hardware, you buy the software. If you buy the software, the U.S. controls the off switch. Carney knows this. He is a numbers guy. He understands leverage. The deal signed today is for 12 conventional long-range submarines from a German-Norwegian consortium. These are hunter-killer subs designed specifically for shallow, icy waters. The price tag, $60 billion. That is $60 billion that just vanished from the books of American defense contractors. That is money that would have built factories in Ohio or Virginia. Instead, it's building shipyards in Kiel, Germany, and assembly plants in Halifax. Trump loves to talk about Buy American. Carney just responded with Buy American. Second receipt, the data sharing agreement. Part of this new European pact involves satellite intelligence. Canada is joining the EU's Galileo system for high-precision navigation in the north. Why does this matter to you? Because for decades, Canada relied on GPS. That's American. That means the U.S. military technically owns the signal. By switching to Galileo for Arctic operations, Canada is saying, we don't trust you anymore. They are building a backup system. You don't build a backup system for your best friend. You build a backup system for a partner you think might go rogue. And third, look at the reaction from the markets. Usually, when there is a rift between Canada and the U.S., the Canadian dollar crashes. Investors get scared. They think, oh no, Canada needs the U.S. to survive. And look at the charts this morning. The Canadian dollar actually ticked up. Why? Because the markets see what Carney is doing. He is diversifying. He is hedging against the chaos of the Trump administration. He is showing the world that Canada has options. Investors like options. They hate instability, and right now the United States looks like the most unstable player on the field. And finally, the most damning receipt of all the silence from the Pentagon. Usually, if a deeply integrated ally buys foreign gear, the Pentagon issues a polite statement. We look forward to interoperability or something boring like that. Today, silence, complete radio silence for 6 hours. That isn't calm, that is panic. That is generals yelling at aides in the Situation Room because they just realized there is a massive hole in their radar coverage, and they can't just order Canada to fix it anymore. The link is broken, the trust is gone. And it happened because one man in the White House thought he could bully a G7 nation like it was a bankrupt contractor. Now you have to look at why Trump is losing control of this situation. Trump operates on a very simple, outdated model of the world. In his mind, power is zero-sum. If I win, you lose. If I am big, you must be small. He thinks leverage is about threats. Do what I say or I tariff your steel. Do what I say or I close the spot border. Do what I say or I insult you on TV. That works when you are dealing with a disorganized opponent. It works when people are afraid. But here is the problem Trump is facing. The world has adapted to him. Mark Carney isn't playing by Trump's rules. He isn't engaging in a Twitter war. He isn't calling Trump names. He is simply changing the architecture of the relationship. Trump threatens tariffs. Carney signs a free trade addendum with the EU. Trump threatens to pull security guarantees. Carney buys defense insurance from NATO's European wing. Trump is like a man trying to smash a window with a hammer, but the window is already open and the person he's trying to scare has already left the building. You can see the frustration in Trump's response. He posted 3 times this morning. He called Carney weak, Mark. He called the deal a betrayal. He threatened to review all treaties. But notice what he didn't do. He didn't offer a better deal. He didn't try to fix the relationship. He just doubled down on the exact behavior that drove Canada away in the first place. This is the trap of the bully. When the bullying stops working, they don't know what to do. They only have one volume setting and it's loud. But the world is tired of the noise. And leaders like Carney know that if you just stay quiet and keep moving, Trump eventually trips over his own feet. Look at the timeline of the last 6 months. Trump demanded Canada increase defense spending to 2% of GDP. He screamed about it at rallies. He made it a campaign issue. Well, guess what? With this new deal, Canada just hit 2%. Carney did exactly what Trump asked. He spent the money. He just didn't spend it with Trump. It is a masterclass in malicious compliance. You want me to pay up? Fine. I'll pay my German friends. It leaves Trump with nothing to say. He can't say Canada isn't pulling its weight. They are. They just aren't pulling his wagon. And this is where the control really slips away because other countries are watching. Japan is watching. South Korea is watching. The UK is watching. They are seeing that it is possible to say no to Trump without the sky falling. They are seeing that there are alternatives to American hegemony. If Canada, the country most culturally and economically tied to the US, can pivot to Europe, then anyone can. Trump is losing control because he made the mistake of thinking loyalty was guaranteed. He thought the alliance was a prison that Canada couldn't leave. Carney just showed him it's a club, and Canada just canceled its membership to the VIP room to go hang out across the street. Now let's talk about Mark Carney. You have to understand why his move is so different from what we are used to seeing from politicians. Most politicians think in 4-year cycles. They think about the next election. They think about the polls next week. Carney thinks in decades. He is a central banker by trade. He ran the Bank of England. He ran the Bank of Canada. He understands systems. He understands risk management. When a central banker sees a volatile asset, they don't scream at it. They de-risk, they diversify, they hedge. To Carney, Donald Trump is a volatile asset. He is a risk to the Canadian portfolio. So Carney isn't fighting Trump emotionally. He is managing the Trump risk structurally. Notice his tone. He hasn't insulted the American people. He keeps emphasizing friendship and shared history. He is extremely polite, but his actions are ruthless. He is effectively building a firewall between Canada and the US executive branch. He is saying, "We love America. We just can't trust your president." This distinction is crucial. It allows him to keep the American public on his side, or at least neutral, while isolating the White House. Carney's strategy is built on the adult in the room theory. While Trump is throwing food at the wall, Carney is calmly setting the table. He knows that Europe is desperate for reliable energy and reliable security partners. Europe is terrified of Russia. Europe is worried about the US pulling out of NATO. So Carney presents Canada as the solution. We have the energy. We have the Arctic flank. We are stable. Work with us. It's an easy sell. Europe is greeting him with open arms because they need him just as much as he needs them. This creates a new power triangle. It used to be a straight line. US tells Canada what to do. Now it's a triangle. Canada, Europe, US. If Trump pushes Canada, Canada leans on Europe. If Trump pushes Europe, Europe leans on Canada. Carney has created leverage out of thin air. He didn't have a big army. He didn't have a massive economy compared to the US, but he had geography and he had credibility. He used those two things to checkmate the loudest man on earth, and he did it without a single insult. That is the difference. Trump wants a fight. Carney wants a win. What does this mean for you? You might be sitting in Ohio or Texas, or maybe you're in Toronto or Vancouver. Why does a submarine deal matter to your daily life? It matters because the world you grew up in, the world where the US and Canada were basically the same economic zone, is fracturing. If you are in the US, this is a warning sign. Your closest neighbor, your biggest trading partner, is building guardrails against your government. This eventually hits trade. If Canada aligns its standards with Europe, that means different regulations. That means supply chains get more complicated. That means the frictionless border becomes full of friction. It means prices go up. If you run a business that relies on parts crossing the border 3 times before a car is finished, you should be worried, because if the political layer separates, the economic layer eventually tears too. If you are in Canada, this is a moment of maturity, but also of risk. You are stepping out from under the umbrella. It's raining outside. Carney is betting that Canada is strong enough to stand in the rain. He is betting that the Canadian economy can pivot faster than Trump can punish it. But the biggest implication is about safety. We are talking about the Arctic, the North Pole. This is the next frontier of global conflict. Russia is putting bases there. China is building icebreakers. Until today, the defense of the North was an American show with Canadian guests. Now it's a European-Canadian operation. Imagine a scenario where a Russian bomber tests Canadian airspace. In the old days, NORAD, the Joint US-Canada Command, would scramble jets. That will still happen for now. But what about in 5 years? If Canada's radar feeds are going to Brussels before they go to Colorado Springs, there is a lag. There is a gap. Trump has created a crack in the shield. He pushed so hard for control that he lost visibility. This makes North America less safe, period. When allies stop talking, enemies start moving. Putin is watching this. Xi Jinping is watching this. They see the division. They see the United States and Canada aren't united anymore. They see opportunity. And that is the tragedy of this moment. Trump claims to be about strength, but by alienating Canada, he has made the continent weaker. He has traded real strategic depth for a few cheap political points on Truth Social. And Carney, by necessity, has had to look across the Atlantic to find a partner who treats him like an equal. Let me leave you with this image. There is a photo circulating from the signing ceremony in Brussels today. On one side of the table, you have the German Chancellor, the French President, and Mark Carney. They are leaning in, looking at a map of the Arctic Circle. They're pointing at shipping lanes. They look focused. They look like a team. On the other side of the screen, you have the feed from Mar-a-Lago. It's just Trump alone shouting into a microphone about how unfair the world is. That is the story. One side is building bridges, the other side is burning them. Carney didn't raise his voice. He raised the cost of ignoring Canada. He proved that you cannot sanction a country that holds the keys to the Arctic. You cannot bully a country that feeds your power grid and supplies your aluminum. Trump forgot the basic rule of the playground. If you are mean to everyone, eventually the other kids start their own game and they don't invite you. So what happens next? Where do we go from here? Scenario A, the cool down. This is the optimistic view. The Pentagon realizes the danger. The generals go to Trump and say, "Sir, you have to fix this. We need that data." Trump grumbles, makes a fake deal, and quietly walks back the threats. Canada keeps the European subs but reconnects. The data feeds, an uneasy peace returns. Scenario B, the escalation. This is the Trump playbook. He feels humiliated, he lashes out, he imposes a 25% tariff on Canadian auto parts tomorrow. He closes a border crossing to inspect for illegals. If he does that, Carney is ready. Europe has already signaled they will back Canada with retaliatory tariffs. We could see a trade war that drags the entire G7 into the mud. The stock market would tank. Inflation would spike. It would be ugly. Scenario C, the realignment. This is the most likely and the most historic. The deal sticks. Canada permanently shifts its defense posture toward NATO Europe. Over the next 10 years, Canada becomes less of a North American power and more of an Arctic Atlantic power. The U.S. is left isolated on its own continent, surrounded by neighbors who view it with suspicion rather than friendship. We are watching the end of the post order. It didn't end with a bang. It ended with a signature in Brussels. This is the part where leaders usually calm it down, but Trump doesn't do calm. And Carney isn't blinking. You are watching a game of chicken between a maniac and a mathematician. The maniac thinks he can't crash. The mathematician knows exactly where the cliff is. I want you to think about the long game here. For a long time, Americans have taken Canada for granted. It's the nice apartment above the party. It's the hat. It's the polite friend. That friendliness masked a deep strategic reality. Canada is huge. It has resources the U.S. desperately needs: uranium, oil, water, rare earth minerals. By forcing Canada to look for other partners, Trump has endangered access to all of that. If Canada signs a critical minerals deal with the EU next month, which is rumored to be in the works, that means the batteries for American electric cars just got harder to make. It means the uranium for American reactors might be contractually obligated to go to France first. We are seeing the weaponization of supply chains, not by an enemy, but by an ally who was pushed too far. Carney is showing us that in the 21st century, sovereignty isn't about how many tanks you have. It's about who you sign contracts with. He is fighting a modern war. Trump is fighting a 1980s trade war, and the Pentagon knows this. That's why they were caught off guard. They are used to measuring power in aircraft carriers. Carney just measured power in alliances. The U.S. military cannot cover the entire Arctic Ocean alone. They need the Canadian coastline. They need the Canadian deep water ports. If those ports are full of German submarines, the U.S. Navy is effectively a guest in its own hemisphere. That is a strategic disaster for Washington, a disaster that was entirely preventable. The takeaway is this: America is only as strong as its friends. When you treat friends like servants, you end up alone. Mark Carney just gave the world a tutorial on how to handle an America First president. You don't argue. You don't beg. You just go somewhere else. You build a world where America matters less. That is the ultimate punishment. Irrelevance. Trump wants to be the center of attention. Carney is making him irrelevant to the future of the Arctic, and that stings more than any insult ever could. Do you think Carney is protecting Canada, or is he daring Trump to overreact? Is this the beginning of a stronger Canada or a broken North America? Drop your take below. I want to know if you think the U.S. deserved this reality check, and subscribe if you want to know what happens when Trump wakes up and sees the headlines tomorrow morning, because the reaction is coming and you won't want to miss the breakdown. This is history. Don't blink. Don't.